Well, yeah, I didn't call that. So I've reached the end of Broadchurch, Series 1. Well handled. I think is the best turn of phrase I can give it. The killer was surprising, but ultimately they didn't play it out for the shock of who it was. They let the emotional resonance of it ring very true. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of emotionally exhausted, and yeah, I need to. Okay, so with it turning out to be Joe, with it turning out to be the husband of Ellie Miller, one of the detectives working on it, that could have really felt cheap. That could have felt unjustified, but I think they did justify it well. And the whole element of what his relationship with Danny was also could have been very cheap. It could have been very, very sleazy, and I think they chose a very good balance, because it makes you uncomfortable, definitely, but it's also doesn't cross into that quite as easily demonized. And no, I don't think the goal is in any way to make you sympathize with Joe, but it does get you to understand his headspace a little bit, because what went on between him and Danny feels wrong at a basic gut fundamental level, and yet he hadn't taken aside from the fact that he killed him, he hadn't taken things to a physical degree that you could objectively go, you can't do that. But it's still this is wrong. This isn't good. And sort of coming back around, and now I understood why the whole thing with Susan and Nigel was in it, because initially I just pegged it as a red herring, and now it has relevance, because that question that Ellie asked Susan now gets asked of her by Beth, and rightfully so. How could you not know? And it almost feels like painful karmic justice that Ellie couldn't possibly understand how Susan couldn't have known what was going on. And now people can't possibly understand how Ellie didn't know what was going on. So there's all that going on. Mark honestly gave the MVP performance in this last episode to me. It started early on when he's just in Danny's bedroom. And he notes, they're gonna have to, take everything out so that it can be the new baby's room. He's just sitting in there, and he goes, I don't want to take it apart. And Mark has been played as a very kind of repressed guy. He doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve. Certainly, he's very reserved. And the scene of him confronting Joe, that was an amazing scene. And not just in terms of the performances, which were great, but also in terms of the shooting, because you've got this little square in this massive metal door that they can look at each other through, and Mark is right up to it. So it's just doing a basic cut back and forth between them as they talk. But because Mark is right up to it, so when it's looking at him, Mark looms so large in that shot because he takes up more than the just the hole in the door, and Joe looks so small because he's so much further back. So like the entire upper half of his body is contained in this box. And the contrast of that combined with the performances, that was a really incredible scene. And with Hardy, I finally remember David Tennant's character's name, with Hardy trying to figure out how to tell Ellie, and very obviously not knowing how to do it, so the only way he can think to do it is to start to relay the information through the means of an interrogation, in terms of asking her questions. That's the best way he seems to be able to relate to anybody, and it's still not appropriate to the situation. Yeah, it's funny, the show was a mystery. And there was, the question of who killed Danny Latimer, but ultimately this is a story about broken relationships and the secrets that are kept within those relationships, because it's pretty much across the board. Jack, the news agent, had his wife wasn't around anymore, but he had a whole life and history that nobody in the town knew. Joe had this thing going on with Danny, which obviously he'd been keeping from everybody. Susan, Nigel was her son, which nobody knew, and he hadn't been aware even of the fact that he was adopted. Mark was having an affair. Hardy talking about his history, what happened at Sandy Brook. His wife was having an affair. Just it's all broken. All the things, all the relationships, all the connections, they're all broken. None of them work. And sort of seeing that, and seeing the commonality of there's no two people who are together in this story who actually know each other, it feels like, properly. And yeah, it's it's a heavy show. It's heavy and it's well done. I'm not gonna rush to see series 2 or series 3. That's not me saying that I won't see them, but I probably won't do episode by episode reviews for them, because I did this because I needed to fill time so I could take a vacation. But it's been an interesting journey watching this. Now, there is going to be one more video, because and this one I need to sleep on before I get to. But for you guys, it'll be all the same. It'll be out tomorrow, your time. You crazy advanced people of the future. I'm tired, can you tell? So in any case, there's going to be one more video coming off the back of Broadchurch, and that is how my having completed this show impacts my thoughts on Chris Chibnall as showrunner for Doctor Who. Because up to this point, my feelings and concerns have been based pretty much entirely on his output within the universe of Doctor Who, meaning Doctor Who and Torchwood. And I've had more than a few people tell me you need to see Broadchurch because that's his best work. And I think they're probably right about that. But I need to sleep on this and think on it a little bit before I can put down my thoughts as to how, either positively or negatively, having completed this first series, this show impacts my thoughts on Chibnall and being the showrunner. So that'll wrap up this one, the 8th episode of Series 1 of Broadchurch, or just give your thoughts on Series 1 overall, whatever they may be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. So just support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter. Links for all that and more is down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.